In 1972, 11 Israeli athletes were murdered at the Munich Olympics by Palestinian terrorists. The response? One of history's most methodical revenge operation. What drives a nation to cross international borders in pursuit of justice? This is the untold story of Mossad, Israel's formidable intelligence agency that has shaped world events from the shadows. From capturing Nazi war criminals to sabotaging nuclear programs, Mossad has operated across 6 continents for decades, eliminating threats and defending Israeli interests. Their agents move through the world undetected, yet their impact reverberates through history. We're about to reveal how this secretive organization actually functions in a dangerous world. Born from trauma. The origins of Mossad. What if the key to understanding the world's most feared intelligence agency was hidden in the ashes of history's darkest chapter? The story of Mossad begins not with espionage, tradecraft, or cutting-edge surveillance, but with existential fear. December 13, 1949, a date that might seem unremarkable, yet it marks the birth of an organization that would become synonymous with ruthless efficiency and legendary operations. But to truly understand Mossad, we need to step back and examine the crucible in which it was forged. Just 1 year earlier, in 1948, Israel had emerged as a nation surrounded by enemies. The Holocaust had claimed 6 million Jewish lives, creating a singular mindset among Israel's founders. Never again would Jewish people face extermination without the means to defend themselves. The shadow of genocide loomed over every decision, with survivors still bearing fresh tattoos on their arms and nightmares in their sleep. The partition of Palestine by the United Nations had been immediately followed by war, with 6 Arab states declaring their intention to destroy the fledgling Jewish state before it could even establish itself. This was a tangible, immediate threat. Israel faced enemies on all sides with superior numbers and resources, while lacking any cohesive intelligence, infrastructure. Information about threats, enemy movements, and potential attacks was scattered across various ad hoc organizations with little coordination. Military intelligence, internal security, and foreign threats were handled by different groups, creating dangerous blind spots in the nation's awareness. For Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, this fragmentation represented an unacceptable vulnerability. A nation surrounded by hostile powers couldn't afford intelligence gaps. The trauma of recent Jewish history demanded vigilance that could only come from knowing threats before they materialized. When Ben-Gurion established Mossad as Israel's dedicated foreign intelligence service, he understood that for a small nation with limited resources, information would be its most powerful weapon. Unlike larger countries that could absorb an initial attack and counter with superior military might, Israel's geographic reality meant that a single devastating surprise attack could potentially end its existence. Mossad's early mission extended beyond conventional intelligence gathering to include facilitating the immigration of Jews from hostile countries to Israel. This unusual mandate revealed a fundamental Israeli intelligence philosophy. The protection of Jewish lives worldwide was considered inseparable from national security. These immigration operations required remarkable creativity and courage. In Operation Ezra and Nehemiah, Mossad agents established clandestine networks across Iraq, where growing hostility threatened the ancient Jewish community. Agents posed as local Arabs, creating safe houses and escape routes through hostile territories. They moved entire families under cover of darkness, sometimes bribing officials or creating elaborate diversions to smuggle people across heavily guarded borders. Similar networks operated in Eastern European countries behind the Iron Curtain, where Cold War politics made Jewish emigration politically explosive. With barely established headquarters and minimal funding, these operations relied on human ingenuity rather than sophisticated technology. Agents maintained cover identities for months while organizing escape networks, knowing a single mistake meant capture or death in countries where they had no diplomatic protection. Despite these constraints, early operations succeeded in bringing thousands of Jews to safety in Israel, like saplings transplanted from scorched earth to fertile soil. This formative period established operational patterns that would become Mossad trademarks. Audacity in conception, meticulous planning, improvisation when needed, and a willingness to operate far beyond Israel's borders. The agency learned to maximize limited resources through superior intelligence rather than overwhelming force. Within Israel's intelligence ecosystem, Mossad found its specific role alongside sister agencies. While Amman handled military intelligence and Shin Bet focused on internal security threats, Mossad became Israel's eyes and ears abroad, the first line of defense in a hostile world. This division created a comprehensive intelligence apparatus monitoring threats from local terrorist cells to foreign military buildups. The agency's leadership understood that intelligence failures could have catastrophic consequences. While other countries might lose territory through intelligence missteps, Israel's very existence hung in the balance. This created an operational culture where failure wasn't an option, where agents were expected to complete missions despite overwhelming odds. This mindset was captured in the unofficial Mossad motto, "By way of deception, thou shalt do war." The phrase encapsulated the agency's approach that for a small nation surrounded by larger enemies, intelligence operations would be an essential form of asymmetric warfare. Through superior information and clandestine operations, Israel could defend itself against threats from nations with far greater conventional military power. Remarkably quickly, this fledgling agency evolved from modest beginnings to undertake operations of stunning complexity. Within its first decade, Mossad transformed from a startup intelligence service into an organization that would astonish even its more established counterparts in the CIA and MI6. The memories of the Holocaust created an intelligence service with a unique profile, viewing threats through the prism of existential survival. This perspective became both Mossad's greatest strength and its significant blind spot. The agency developed an almost unmatched ability to identify and neutralize immediate threats, sometimes at the cost of longer-term strategic thinking. Israel's first prime minister understood that his nation's survival lay not in matching adversaries tank for tank, but in knowing their intentions before they could act. Ben-Gurion's decision to create Mossad established the foundation for Israel's doctrine of qualitative military edge, the belief that technological sophistication and superior intelligence could offset numerical disadvantages. The Eichmann Operation, defining moment. While Mossad was gaining confidence in its capabilities, one man responsible for sending millions to their deaths was enjoying his freedom half a world away. The mission to capture Adolf Eichmann would redefine what intelligence agencies believed possible and permanently alter Mossad's global reputation. In the quiet Buenos Aires suburb of San Fernando, a man known to neighbors as Ricardo Clement lived an unremarkable life. He took the same bus home each evening and kept to himself. This ordinary existence concealed an extraordinary truth. Ricardo Clement was SS Lieutenant Colonel Adolf Eichmann, the Nazi bureaucrat who had orchestrated the transportation logistics for the Holocaust. The architect of rail schedules that delivered millions to death camps now worked as a foreman at a Mercedes-Benz factory. When intelligence about Eichmann's whereabouts reached Mossad in 1960, it presented both opportunity and unprecedented challenge. Here was one of history's most notorious war criminals, living beyond conventional justice's reach. No extradition treaty existed between Israel and Argentina, particularly for crimes committed before Israel existed as a state. Argentina, with its large German community and history of sheltering Nazi fugitives, would likely reject any formal request. The obstacles seemed insurmountable. Mossad remained a young agency, with limited resources for complex foreign operations. Working 7,000 miles from home meant no quick extraction if things went wrong. They needed to build an operational infrastructure from scratch in a country where they had minimal presence. Any misstep risked an international incident. Isser Harel, Mossad's director, assembled a team distinguished by determination rather than numbers. Agents posing as tourists and businessmen arrived in Argentina, establishing covers while conducting surveillance. The tension was palpable as they photographed the suspect from concealed positions, their hearts racing whenever Eichmann passed within feet of their hidden cameras. Each agent knew discovery meant not only mission failure, but potential capture in hostile territory. They mapped every detail of his commute, noting optimal interception points, escape routes, and areas with minimal witnesses. The team lived as ghosts, never drawing attention, constantly relocating, while constructing a flawless operational picture. Every evening as Eichmann's bus approached his stop, agents would hold their breath, studying his movements, timing his walk home down the darkened street. May 11, 1960 was chosen for the operation. As Eichmann stepped off his bus and began walking home in the evening darkness, a car pulled alongside him. In seconds, agents subdued him and bundled him into the vehicle. He was taken to a safe house for questioning to confirm his identity. When asked for his SS number, Eichmann provided it automatically, a critical error that confirmed what the team already believed. This moment, when the once powerful Nazi mechanically recited his identification, vindicated months of meticulous planning. They had captured their target without firing a shot. The Nazi who once wielded power over life and death was now at the survivor's state's mercy. Capturing Eichmann merely began the challenge. The team needed to keep him hidden while preparing to smuggle him from a sovereign nation. For 10 days, they kept him sedated in the safe house with round-the-clock security while finalizing extraction plans. Fortuitously, Argentina was celebrating its 150th independence anniversary, with numerous diplomatic delegations in the country. Mossad arranged for an El Al flight to land in Argentina, providing the perfect extraction vehicle. The extraction showcased remarkable ingenuity. They disguised Eichmann as an ill crew member. A fake medical team accompanied this patient. Through airport security, Eichmann was sedated to appear ill, yet able to walk with assistance. The agents supporting him through the airport were his captors, and the medical personnel were fellow operatives. As they passed through security, their medical credentials and the apparent medical emergency created enough distraction that no one scrutinized their documentation closely. Within hours, Eichmann was airborne to Israel, where Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion would announce the capture to a stunned world. Diplomatic consequences were severe. Argentina filed formal complaints with the UN Security Council, accusing Israel of sovereignty violation. The controversy strained relations between countries for years. For Israel, this diplomatic cost was justified to bring one of the Holocaust's chief architects to justice. Eichmann's trial in Jerusalem was broadcast internationally, allowing Holocaust survivors to testify about witnessed atrocities. For many, this was their first public accounting of their experiences. The world watched as the man who had organized their transportation to death camps sat in a bulletproof glass booth, listening impassively to accounts of suffering he had caused. The trial concluded with Eichmann's conviction and execution in 1962, the only time Israel has carried out a death sentence. But the operation's impact extended far beyond one man's fate. The Eichmann capture fundamentally transformed intelligence operations' perceived boundaries worldwide. It demonstrated that with planning, patience, and audacity, a small team could execute complex operations anywhere globally. Mossad proved that no fugitive, regardless of distance, fled or time passed, was beyond reach. For intelligence agencies worldwide, the operation presented a new paradigm. The CIA and KGB, organizations with vast resources, recognized that the fledgling Israeli service had accomplished something extraordinary with minimal means. The mission became a human intelligence operations case study, showing how traditional tradecraft could overcome material limitations. For Mossad, the Eichmann Operation transformed its reputation from an obscure agency focused on facilitating Jewish immigration to a formidable global player. Potential enemies now had to consider that Israeli agents might appear anywhere, anytime. This psychological effect became a cornerstone of Mossad's operational philosophy: while the lessons learned in Buenos Aires would guide countless future operations. Shadows in science, technological innovation. The lessons from Buenos Aires became Mossad doctrine, but there was one critical weakness no amount of planning could overcome. Israel was tiny compared to its adversaries, in a region where neighboring countries could field armies many times larger than Israel's entire population. The fledgling intelligence agency needed a force multiplier. Their answer wouldn't be found in recruiting more spies, but in something far more innovative. From the beginning, Mossad faced a fundamental problem. How could a country of barely 2 million people gather intelligence against enemies with vastly superior numbers? This existential question drove the agency toward a solution that would eventually become its signature advantage. While other intelligence services relied on overwhelming manpower, Mossad turned to technology as the great equalizer. By the early 1960s, Mossad had established specialized technical units that developed surveillance equipment and weapon systems years ahead of their time. These were custom innovations created for the unique challenges of operating in hostile territory with minimal support. Teams of Israeli engineers, many trained in the military's technical units, worked in unmarked buildings, developing miniaturized cameras and recording devices that agents could easily conceal. These technological innovations shined in their practical application. During high-stakes operations, Mossad agents received tools specifically designed to overcome particular obstacles they faced in the field. For instance, when operatives needed to document sensitive materials in a Syrian government facility, engineers developed a camera disguised as a cigarette case with specialized film that could capture clear images in low light. The device included a silent shutter mechanism and could photograph an entire page of documents with a single exposure, crucial when an agent might have only seconds alone with classified materials. This technological emphasis became vital to Mossad's survival strategy, allowing them to accomplish with specialized equipment what other agencies required dozens of operatives to achieve. This approach reached its most dramatic expression in 1966, when Mossad orchestrated Operation Diamond. The mission targeted something the Western intelligence community desperately wanted: a Soviet-built MiG-21 fighter jet, the most advanced Soviet aircraft of its time. The Soviets had provided these aircraft to their Arab allies, but had carefully prevented Western powers from examining them up close. Rather than attempting to steal the aircraft, Mossad identified and cultivated an Iraqi pilot willing to defect with his plane. The operation required months of careful planning and coordination. Mossad agents made contact with the pilot, an Iraqi Christian named Munir Redfa, who had grown disillusioned with the Iraqi regime, and painstakingly arranged his defection route. On August 16, 1966, Redfa took off from his base in Iraq for what was supposed to be a routine training mission. Instead, he flew his MiG-21 west toward Israel, navigating at low altitude to avoid radar detection. Israeli jets met him at the border and escorted him to a secure airbase, where the aircraft was immediately hidden from satellite surveillance. The intelligence value of this single operation was extraordinary. Western experts examined the MiG-21's avionics, weapons systems and flight characteristics in unprecedented detail. This technical intelligence helped NATO countries develop more effective countermeasures and tactics against Soviet aircraft during the Cold War. The United States was so impressed by the acquisition that the CIA later borrowed the aircraft for their own evaluation. Operation Diamond exemplified Mossad's approach to intelligence, using technological ingenuity and careful planning to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. The agency succeeded through creativity and technical sophistication rather than with large teams of operatives or massive resources. This pattern of technological innovation continued through the decades. By the early 1970s, Mossad had begun developing computerized databases to catalog and cross-reference intelligence, a revolutionary approach when most agencies still relied on paper filing systems. Analysts could quickly search for connections between individuals, organizations, and events, providing capabilities that other agencies wouldn't develop for years. The 1980s saw Mossad investing in early satellite communication technologies that allowed field agents to transmit information securely from hostile territory, while the KGB and CIA operated with larger teams and more extensive networks of safe houses. Mossad compensated with communications technology that allowed smaller teams to operate more effectively. By the 1990s, as the internet transformed global communications, Mossad established a dedicated cyber division, operating from nondescript buildings in Tel Aviv's suburbs. This unit recruited Israel's brightest programming talents, directly from military intelligence units and the tech sector, to develop both defensive and offensive cyber capabilities. This early investment in cyber capabilities positioned Mossad at the forefront of digital intelligence operations. While never officially acknowledged by Israel, cybersecurity experts widely attribute sophisticated operations like the Stuxnet attack on Iran's nuclear centrifuges to joint American-Israeli efforts, representing some of the most advanced cyber weapons deployed. What sustained Mossad's technological edge was its relationship with Israel's broader innovation ecosystem. The agency maintained close ties with the IDF's elite technical units and Israel's booming civilian tech sector. This created a pipeline of talent and innovation flowing into the agency. Young Israelis who demonstrated exceptional technical skills during military service were often recruited directly into Mossad's technical divisions, while others brought expertise from civilian technology companies. The technological emphasis that began as necessity evolved into a core competitive advantage. By focusing on quality over quantity, Mossad developed capabilities that allowed it to operate effectively despite its small size. This edge became particularly crucial as operational challenges grew more complex. Terrorist organizations became more sophisticated in their security practices, while state adversaries invested heavily in counterintelligence capabilities, intensifying a technological arms race where innovative tools became essential to intelligence success. The Yom Kippur War intelligence failure. By 1973, Mossad had built such a fearsome reputation that Israelis developed an almost mythological belief in their intelligence services. The stunning victories of the past, the capture of Eichmann, the acquisition of the MiG-21, the devastating preemptive strikes of the Six-Day War, had created a dangerous illusion of invincibility. This perception had infected the intelligence community itself. For all its technological advantages, Mossad failed to recognize the most fundamental vulnerability in intelligence work: human psychology. In 1973, an intelligence doctrine nicknamed the concept created such powerful confirmation bias that Israel's spy masters ignored mounting evidence of imminent attack, a mistake that would reshape the agency forever and nearly destroy the country it was meant to protect. Analysts had become victims of their own success, developing a collective arrogance that made them dismissive of information contradicting their existing beliefs. As one former intelligence officer later admitted, "We thought we knew everything. We believed our own legend." This overconfidence created the perfect conditions for catastrophic failure. The fatal flaw in Mossad's analytical framework was the concept of formal intelligence doctrine that had hardened into dogma. Like a compass calibrated to the wrong magnetic field, this doctrine pointed analysts in the wrong direction, regardless of actual conditions. According to this belief, Arab states wouldn't attack Israel without first achieving air superiority. Since Egypt and Syria lacked the advanced aircraft and training to challenge the Israeli Air Force, the conclusion seemed obvious: no attack was possible. This doctrine became so entrenched that it created a devastating form of institutional blindness. When Egyptian and Syrian forces began unusual training exercises and troop movements in September 1973, analysts viewed these activities through the distorting lens of the concept. They convinced themselves these were merely defensive preparations or posturing to pressure Israel in diplomatic negotiations. The warning signs appeared in sequence, each more urgent than the last. Egypt's president, Anwar Sadat, publicly stated his willingness to sacrifice 1 million soldiers to regain lost territories. Syrian forces conducted large-scale mobilizations. Soviet families were evacuated from both Egypt and Syria. a classic warning sign of impending conflict. Yet each indicator was rationalized away, filtered through the distorted perspective of a flawed paradigm. Several junior analysts noted the unusual patterns of activity and suggested they indicated preparations for war. But their concerns were dismissed by senior leadership, who couldn't imagine their carefully constructed worldview might be wrong. The system had no mechanism to elevate contrarian views or challenge established thinking. On October 6, 1973, Yom Kippur, the holiest day in Judaism, Egypt and Syria launched their coordinated assault. Israeli defensive positions along the Suez Canal and in the Golan Heights were overwhelmed by the surprise and ferocity of the attack. The timing was deliberate. Many Israeli soldiers were away from their posts observing the holiday, and mobilization of reserves would be significantly delayed. The intelligence failure's consequences were immediate and catastrophic. In the war's opening days, Israel lost a staggering portion of its military hardware. Tank battalions stationed along the defensive Bar-Lev line on the Suez Canal were overrun. Egyptian forces, using newly acquired Soviet anti-tank missiles, destroyed nearly 200 Israeli tanks in the first 24 hours. The vaunted Israeli Air Force, attempting to provide emergency air support, flew into dense anti-aircraft defenses and suffered devastating losses. For the first time since its founding, Israel faced the very real possibility of military defeat. The situation was so dire that Defense Minister Moshe Dayan, typically stoic and confident, considered the possibility of Israel's destruction. In a moment of desperation, some accounts suggest Israel even prepared its nuclear options, though this remains officially unconfirmed. What makes this failure particularly striking is that it wasn't primarily a failure of intelligence collection. The information existed. Mossad and military intelligence had detected the unusual movements and activities. The failure was in analysis and interpretation, the inability to question deeply held assumptions when confronted with contradictory evidence. As the war progressed, Israel managed to recover from the initial shock, mobilize its reserves, and eventually turn the tide. But the cost was enormous. Over 2,600 Israeli soldiers killed, thousands wounded, and a shattered sense of security that would never fully heal. Beyond the military casualties, the Yom Kippur surprise created a collective trauma that fundamentally altered Israel's national psychology, a wound that transformed both its people and its institutions. Mossad and Israel's entire intelligence community underwent a radical overhaul. New analytical methodologies were implemented, including competing analysis teams that would examine intelligence from different perspectives. A formal devil's advocate role was established, with officers specifically tasked with challenging prevailing wisdom and presenting alternative interpretations. The aftermath brought a period of painful self-examination. The Agranat Commission, established to investigate the failure, delivered a scathing report that led to the dismissal of numerous intelligence and military leaders. More importantly, it identified the systemic problems that had allowed such a massive intelligence failure to occur. The reforms addressed the psychological aspects of intelligence analysis. Analysts were trained to recognize confirmation bias and other cognitive errors. The doctrine of the concept was dismantled, replaced by a more flexible analytical framework that demanded rigorous testing of assumptions. The psychological impact of the failure created a never-again mentality within Mossad that drove the agency to become more aggressive in pursuing threats. Operations previously considered too risky became viewed as necessary precautions. The willingness to take extraordinary measures to eliminate threats became a defining characteristic of Mossad's philosophy, setting the stage for some of its most controversial operations in the years that followed. The Yom Kippur War fundamentally changed how Mossad approached threat assessment. No longer would potential threats be dismissed as implausible. The agency adopted a hyper-cautious approach, preferring false alarms over missed threats. This shift in mindset had profound implications for Israel's security posture. Operation Wrath of God. The Munich response. before the intelligence failure of 1973 forced Mossad to reform its analysis methods. Another trauma had already reshaped its operational doctrine. After Palestinian terrorists murdered 11 Israeli athletes at the Munich Olympics, Mossad unleashed an international manhunt so relentless and far-reaching that it rewrote the rules of counterterrorism forever. The images were seared into the world's consciousness: masked men in tracksuits, standing on Olympic Village balconies, athletes held at gunpoint, and the eventual bloodbath that turned what should have been a celebration of human achievement into a tragedy. For Israelis, Munich represented a direct assault on their identity, striking their citizens on the world stage at an event meant to unite humanity beyond politics. Prime Minister Golda Meir faced a critical decision in the aftermath. She could pursue diplomatic channels, issue statements of condemnation, or respond with a show of military force. Instead, she chose a third path that would forever alter how nations respond to terrorism. In a closed-door meeting with Mossad leadership, tension permeated the room as Meir spoke with quiet determination. She authorized what would become known as Operation Wrath of God, a directive to hunt down and eliminate everyone involved in planning and executing the Munich attack. We have no choice. We have to strike at the terrorist organizations wherever we can reach them. Every murderer of our people, of our children, must pay, Meir reportedly told her cabinet. This was a strategic decision to demonstrate that attackers of Israeli citizens would never sleep soundly again, regardless of which country harbored them. To execute this unprecedented global operation, Mossad created specialized assassination teams, known by the Hebrew term kidan, meaning bayonet. These were meticulously selected and trained assassins who could operate in any environment, blend into any society, and eliminate targets through various methods. The selection process was brutal, weeding out all but the most psychologically resilient operators who could maintain absolute secrecy and function under extreme pressure. The operation extended across continents. In European capitals and Middle Eastern cities, Mossad agents moved like ghosts, appearing only at the moment of execution before vanishing again. In Rome, they assassinated the PLO representative with precision shots. In Paris, a key logistics coordinator was eliminated with a strategically placed bomb. Each operation built upon the last, creating an atmosphere of dread among those who had participated in the Munich attack. The sophistication of their methods evolved constantly. Simple but effective gunshots in public places gave way to more elaborate techniques. Booby-trapped telephones detonated when answered. Poisoned toothpaste tubes delivered lethal doses through the gums. These innovations allowed Mossad to strike in environments where conventional operations would be impossible, leaving targets constantly guessing from which direction death might come. Even the finest intelligence agencies make mistakes. In Lillehammer, Norway, in July 1973, a catastrophic error occurred when Mossad agents misidentified Ahmed Bouchiki, an innocent Moroccan waiter, as Ali Hassan Salameh, one of the alleged masterminds of the Munich attack. They shot Bouchiki multiple times as he walked home with his pregnant wife, killing him instantly. The aftermath exposed Mossad's operation to international scrutiny. Norwegian authorities arrested 6 agents, revealing their methods and identities. The diplomatic backlash was severe, with European nations suddenly vigilant for Israeli assassination teams operating on their soil. The shadowy details of Operation Wrath of God were dragged into harsh public attention. Where most agencies might have abandoned such an operation after exposure, Mossad merely paused. After strategic reassessment, the hunt continued with improved methods and stricter protocols. The exposed agents were eventually released in prisoner exchanges, and new teams took their place. The mission transcended a single failure, no matter how public or tragic. The psychological impact on Palestinian operatives achieved precisely what Mossad intended. Those connected to terrorism against Israel lived in constant fear. They looked over their shoulders, checked under their cars, and grew suspicious of new acquaintances. Some refused to answer telephones or accept packages. This atmosphere of paranoia disrupted terrorist networks by making their members distrust their environments and each other. Ali Hassan Salama, the operation's primary target, who had eluded the Lillehammer team, understood the threat completely. He employed elaborate security measures, changing locations constantly, and surrounding himself with bodyguards. For years, he successfully evaded Mossad's reach, but the agency's patience was limitless. In January 1979, nearly 7 years after Munich, Mossad finally caught up with Salama in Beirut. A female agent had infiltrated his security circle, allowing the team to plant a car bomb along his regular route. The explosion killed Salama instantly, along with 4 bodyguards and 4 bystanders. Operation Wrath of God revolutionized counterterrorism. Through its global reach and methodical execution, it fundamentally changed how nations approached threats. Before Munich, terrorists could expect that distance provided safety. After Mossad's response, that assumption vanished. The doctrine that no attack would go unanswered, regardless of time or geography, became a model that other intelligence agencies would study and adapt. The operation raised profound questions about sovereignty, international law, and extrajudicial killings. When does a nation's right to defend its citizens supersede another country's territorial sovereignty? Can targeted assassinations be justified as self-defense against terrorism? These questions, first confronted during Operation Wrath of God, continue to challenge international legal frameworks. Despite international controversy, inside Israel, the operation received overwhelming public support. For a population that had witnessed the Holocaust within living memory, followed by decades of existential threats, the message was clear: attacks on Israelis would never go unanswered. The psychological comfort this provided to ordinary Israelis proved immeasurable. The Dubai Operation Al-Mabouh assassination. A security camera silently captures a man in tennis attire entering an elevator at Dubai's Al Bustan Rotana Hotel. He casually stands beside a middle-aged guest, appearing to be just another tourist. Hours later, that same camera would record him exiting hurriedly with a different posture. Mission accomplished. This mundane hotel security footage would expose one of history's most meticulously planned assassinations. Hamas military commander, Al-Mabouh, had checked into the hotel, unaware that his movements had triggered an operation involving 26 Mossad operatives. The complexity of this mission would be thoroughly documented by Dubai's extensive security camera network. The psychological comfort Mossad provided Israelis, through decades of operations, would face an unprecedented challenge in 2010, when the agency's methods were exposed to the world in high definition. While previous operations maintained plausible deniability, what happened in Dubai would shatter the veil of secrecy that had protected Mossad's operational techniques for decades. Al-Mabouh was a founding member of Hamas's military wing responsible for the kidnapping and murder of Israeli soldiers and a crucial link in the weapons supply chain between Iran and Gaza. His elimination had been on Mossad's priority list for years. The operation revealed an assassination machine of remarkable sophistication, operatives working in synchronization, each with clearly defined roles in what should have been the perfect murder. The team arrived in Dubai over several days, entering the country using genuine-looking passports from Britain, Ireland, France, Germany, and Australia. The forgeries were convincing enough to pass international border controls. After Al-Mabouh's body was discovered, Dubai's police chief, Lieutenant General Dehi Khalfan Tamim, launched an investigation that would unravel the entire operation through the city's security camera network. These cameras captured Mossad tradecraft in unprecedented detail. Footage showed operatives in various disguises, some wearing wigs, others in fake beards, and several in tennis attire, blending with hotel guests. The cameras documented their coordinated surveillance, communication methods, and precise movements. One sequence showed team members entering an elevator with the target, then following him to identify his room number. The assassination demonstrated sophisticated methods. The hit team subdued Al-Mabouh with a muscle relaxant before suffocating him. They arranged the room to suggest natural causes, placing medications by his bedside and locking the door from inside using the security chain. They even manipulated the electronic lock to show no entries during the time of death. Without a thorough autopsy, the true cause might never have been discovered. A command center coordinated the entire operation, with agents maintaining continuous communication. When Al-Mabouh left his room, surveillance teams tracked him while others prepared for his return. Mossad technicians easily bypassed the hotel's electronic keycard system for unfettered access. The operation's structure became clear through the footage. Surveillance specialists tracked Al-Mabouh's movements. Technical experts reprogrammed his door's electronic lock. A logistics team secured escape routes, and the hit team carried out the assassination. This division showcased military-like precision few intelligence services could match. Within hours, all operatives had left Dubai, dispersing to different countries with meticulously planned escape routes. Under normal circumstances, this would have been perfect. A clean assassination with no witnesses and no trace of the perpetrators. The diplomatic fallout was immediate and severe. Countries whose passports had been forged responded with unusual public criticism of Israel. Britain expelled the Israeli diplomat believed to be Mossad's London station chief. Australia and Ireland summoned Israeli ambassadors for formal reprimands. This created a diplomatic crisis that damaged Israel's relationships with typically friendly nations, leading to long-term changes in how these countries interacted with Israeli intelligence. Dubai's camera network changed everything. Lieutenant General Tamim released over 30 minutes of compiled security footage showing the operatives throughout their mission. These images were broadcast worldwide, with passport photos of all team members. For the first time, the world witnessed Mossad's actual operational methods through real footage rather than dramatized accounts. Beyond diplomatic consequences, the exposure effectively ended the careers of 26 experienced field agents. Their faces had been broadcast globally, making them recognizable to foreign intelligence services worldwide, a significant blow to an agency as selective and specialized as Mossad. Perhaps more damaging was the revelation of Mossad's methods. Intelligence agencies worldwide studied the Dubai footage as a masterclass in covert operations. The camera avoidance techniques, disguise methods, and team coordination became textbook examples of murder assassination operations, while simultaneously revealing vulnerabilities in Mossad's approach to surveillance-heavy environments. For Israel, the operation represented a complex trade-off. They eliminated a high-value target responsible for Israeli deaths and weapons smuggling, but exposed their operational methods, damaged diplomatic relationships, and lost numerous experienced agents. This cost-benefit calculation became the subject of intense internal debate within Israeli intelligence circles. The Al-Mabouh operation marked a turning point in Mossad's history. It demonstrated that in an age of ubiquitous surveillance, even the most careful operations could be compromised. The agency was forced to reevaluate its tradecraft, particularly in environments with security cameras and biometric identification systems. Future operations would require new approaches to counter the technological challenges that had exposed their Dubai team. Despite these setbacks, the operation also cemented Mossad's reputation for determination and operational capability. The message to Israel's enemies remained clear. There was nowhere to hide. Even as the methods were exposed, the willingness to undertake such complex operations against high-value targets served as a powerful deterrent. The Shadow War, countering Iran's nuclear program. As Israeli intelligence regrouped from the Dubai exposure, they were already deep into what many consider their most audacious campaign yet, a shadow war against Iran's nuclear ambitions, using methods that blurred the line between espionage and acts of war. When traditional diplomacy and sanctions failed to halt Iran's nuclear program, Mossad adopted an unprecedented strategy, systematically dismantling the program through a combination of sabotage, assassination, and cyber warfare. This represented state-sponsored sabotage on an industrial scale. While cyber attacks provided deniability, Mossad also employed direct methods. Between 2010 and 2012, 4 Iranian nuclear scientists were eliminated on the streets of Tehran. The trademark technique involved motorcyclists attaching magnetic bombs to scientists' cars during morning traffic. These assassinations created an atmosphere of fear among Iran's scientific community, extending far beyond the immediate victims. The centerpiece of this campaign was the Stuxnet computer worm, malware, so sophisticated it fundamentally changed our understanding of cyber warfare. Like invisible saboteurs infiltrating a vast industrial complex, these digital agents targeted the programmable logic controllers, managing Iran's nuclear centrifuges at the Natanz facility. They caused the centrifuges to spin at improper speeds while simultaneously reporting normal operations to monitoring systems. This digital sabotage accomplished what conventional airstrikes couldn't, destroying nearly a fifth of Iran's centrifuges without dropping a single bomb. The code activated only when detecting specific configurations used in Iranian nuclear facilities, minimizing collateral damage worldwide. For the first time, a nation used digital means to inflict physical damage on another country's critical infrastructure without leaving fingerprints definitive enough for immediate military response. Iranian nuclear scientists began looking over their shoulders, questioning whether promotions might put them in crosshairs. Some reportedly declined positions of greater responsibility, while others requested additional security measures that complicated Iran's work. The operations created paralyzing uncertainty for anyone weighing whether to join Iran's nuclear efforts, with the real possibility that doing so could make them targets. Mossad physically removed the documents rather than photographing them, a strategic choice preventing Iran from claiming fabricated evidence, while allowing third-party verification. This physical evidence influenced the Trump administration's decision on the JCPOA nuclear deal. The raid required meticulous planning. Agents used human intelligence from Iranian government sources. They gathered signals intelligence from intercepted communications. On the operation night, they deployed sophisticated jamming devices. They neutralized the alarm system. They breached the facility's iron doors. They selected half a ton of documents. They extracted them unseen. They crossed international borders undetected. In 2018, Mossad executed perhaps its most audacious operation. Agents infiltrated a warehouse in Tehran's Kiryzak district. They extracted over 100,000 files, constituting Iran's nuclear archive. These documents revealed years of work on atomic weapons, including warhead designs and production plans, dating back to the Ahmad project. The shadow war reached its apex in November 2020, with the elimination of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, widely considered the father of Iran's nuclear weapons program. Unlike previous close-quarters assassinations, Fakhrizadeh was killed by a remote-controlled machine gun mounted on a parked truck that self-destructed after completing its mission. This operation showcased a technological evolution in assassination techniques. The remote-controlled system incorporated artificial intelligence and facial recognition software to identify Fakhrizadeh among his security detail and execute the attack with minimal collateral damage. The sophistication suggested Mossad had developed capabilities resembling science fiction more than traditional espionage. Beyond high-profile operations, Mossad attacked Iran's supply chain. Former Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif acknowledged that Mossad had planted explosives in the marble foundations supporting Iran's centrifuge platforms. This confirmed what outgoing Mossad chief Yossi Cohen suggested in a 2021 interview about supplying Iran with explosive embedded marble foundations. The campaign revealed fundamental strategic differences between Israel and the United States. While American policymakers favored diplomatic approaches and targeted sanctions, Israel consistently pushed for more aggressive action. Embracing the Begin Doctrine, Israel's commitment to preemptively neutralize potential nuclear threats in the Middle East, If the Zionist regime can infiltrate one of the dealers, then it can do anything and install anything, Zarif explained, highlighting how sanctions forced Iran to rely on intermediary suppliers, creating vulnerabilities that Mossad expertly exploited. These operations represent a watershed in intelligence history. Their unprecedented nature lies in their strategic integration. Mossad combines cyber warfare, physical sabotage, targeted assassinations, and classic intelligence operations into a coordinated effort that delayed Iran's nuclear ambitions without triggering conventional warfare. The approach invented a new category of conflict, more aggressive than espionage but less provocative than military action. This gray zone warfare created enough ambiguity to prevent direct retaliation, while achieving strategic objectives that would normally require military intervention. For intelligence services worldwide, these operations established new paradigms for what's possible in the space between peace and war. October 7th. The intelligence blind spot. October 7th, 2023 began as a peaceful Shabbat and Simchat Torah, a day meant for rest and celebration in Israel. By sunrise, that tranquility vanished as Hamas launched a coordinated assault of unprecedented scale. Fighters poured across the border, overwhelming security forces and targeting civilian communities with devastating efficiency. The human toll was staggering. Approximately 1,200 Israelis and foreign nationals dead. Among them, 815 were civilians going about their normal lives. More than 250 people were taken hostage, disappearing into Gaza as families watched helplessly. This assault left Israeli society reeling, facing a security nightmare few could have imagined possible. For all Mossad's brilliance in its shadow war with Iran, their most profound failure was brewing right at Israel's doorstep. The agency that could remotely assassinate nuclear scientists and extract half a ton of documents from Tehran somehow missed the deadliest attack on Israeli soil since the nation's founding, a catastrophic blind spot that shocked the world and shattered Israel's sense of security. The shock value stemmed not merely from the attack itself, but from who failed to prevent it. This catastrophe happened to an intelligence service renowned worldwide for its foresight and operational capabilities. Experts quickly labeled it an intelligence failure for the ages, drawing direct comparisons to the Yom Kippur War 50 years earlier. Once again, Israel's intelligence community had fallen victim to its own preconceptions, unable to envision a scenario outside their established framework. This strategic miscalculation worsened through an imbalance in intelligence gathering methods. In our era of advanced surveillance technology, Mossad had grown increasingly reliant on signals intelligence and cyber operations, methods proving tremendously effective against nation-states like Iran, but creating blind spots when facing non-state actors. Human intelligence sources inside Gaza had dwindled to dangerously low levels, severely limiting Israel's visibility into Hamas's evolving capabilities and intentions. Examining the failure reveals dangerous shifts in Israel's intelligence priorities. For years, Mossad had directed its most sophisticated resources toward countering Iran's nuclear program. This focus created institutional tunnel vision, where Hamas, though recognized as a threat, was categorized as a secondary concern, primarily handled by Shin Bet, Israel's internal security service. Mossad had dedicated itself to anticipating threats globally, while neglecting one literally at its border. The situation exposed a classic failure of imagination. The inability to conceive scenarios outside established thinking patterns. Analysts had developed a fixed belief that Hamas lacked both the capability and motivation to launch such an ambitious attack. This conceptual fixation mirrored analytical failures preceding the Yom Kippur War, where intelligence officials couldn't imagine Egypt attacking without air superiority. Warning signs appeared, but were dismissed. In the weeks before the attack, unusual training activities and communications were flagged by lower-level analysts, but either downplayed or never properly escalated. The New York Times reported that Israeli intelligence issued specific warnings to border guards immediately before the attack, noting suspicious activity surges. These urgent alerts went unheeded, representing breakdowns in both analysis and response protocols. The Hamas operation's scale makes the intelligence failure even more striking. This wasn't a hastily organized attack, but a complex operation requiring months of planning, training, and preparation. Hamas fighters conducted mock assaults on replicas of Israeli settlements, stockpiled weapons, and coordinated across multiple cells, activities that typically trigger alerts in functioning intelligence systems. Such extensive preparations going undetected suggests fundamental flaws in Mossad's collection priorities and analytical frameworks. This failure occurred despite Israel possessing sophisticated surveillance technology. The Gaza border is heavily monitored with sensors, cameras, and detection systems designed specifically to prevent infiltration. Hamas breaching these defenses on such a massive scale suggests not just intelligence failure, but a broader systemic breakdown in Israel's security architecture. This catastrophe prompted fundamental re-examination of how Mossad balances global operations with regional threats. For decades, the agency built its reputation on far-reaching operations, creating a sense of omnipresence. Yet October 7th exposed the dangers of an intelligence service stretched too thin, focused on distant horizons while missing gathering storms along its own borders. In the aftermath, the Israeli intelligence community faced unprecedented public criticism. Citizens who had believed in the near omniscience of their intelligence services suddenly confronted the reality that even Mossad has blind spots. This public reckoning forced a rapid reassessment of intelligence priorities, with resources redirected toward Hamas and other immediate threats. Lessons from this intelligence breakdown are already reshaping Mossad's approach. The agency is reportedly rebuilding human intelligence networks in Gaza and surrounding territories. Analytical methods are being overhauled to guard against groupthink and challenge established assumptions. The institutional division between Mossad and Shin Bet is being reconsidered to ensure critical intelligence doesn't fall between organizational cracks. Beyond operational changes, the October 7th failure sparked deeper questions about Mossad's future role. An agency that built its reputation on bold offensive operations now faces pressure to strengthen its defensive capabilities. The balance between collecting intelligence and acting on it is being recalibrated, with greater emphasis on identifying imminent threats rather than long-term strategic challenges. For all its technological sophistication and operational brilliance, the October 7th failure revealed something profound about intelligence work. It remains fundamentally human, subject to biases, blind spots, and failures of imagination. The same cognitive patterns that contributed to the Yom Kippur War intelligence failure 50 years earlier resurface today, suggesting that some lessons must be relearned by each generation of intelligence professionals. The ethical battlefield, moral dilemmas of espionage. Behind the headlines of successful operations and intelligence coups lies a shadowy moral landscape that few outside the intelligence community ever truly glimpse. While intelligence agencies worldwide grapple with ethical questions, Mossad operatives navigate these waters with exceptional frequency and intensity due to Israel's unique security situation. The doctrine of Ein Breira, Hebrew for no choice, permeates Mossad's operational philosophy. This concept serves as a psychological framework that helps agents rationalize actions that would be unconscionable in normal circumstances. When faced with threats perceived as existential to Israel's survival, operatives internalize that conventional moral boundaries must sometimes be crossed. This creates a psychological environment where extreme measures become justifiable through the lens of national survival. Like the Operation Spring of Youth in Beirut, field operations present immediate ethical dilemmas. An agent tracking a terrorist cell might identify the target in a crowded cafe, surrounded by innocent civilians. The decision window may be seconds. Eliminate the threat now, potentially harming bystanders, or risk losing the target and allowing a planned attack to proceed. These aren't theoretical scenarios but regular operational realities for Mossad agents, walking a moral tightrope with lives hanging in the balance. The psychological toll of these split-second ethical calculations accumulates over time. Former operatives describe compartmentalization fatigue, the gradual erosion of their ability to separate their operational personas from their authentic selves. An agent might spend years living under deep cover, building relationships with assets, while knowing these connections are based on deception. The mental partitioning required exacts a heavy price. The hardest part isn't what you do in the field, one retired agent explained in a rare interview. It's coming home to your family with a smile, knowing you can never tell them where you were or what you did. This isolation compounds the psychological burden, as agents lack normal support systems for processing morally complex experiences. Among the most ethically fraught tactics in Mossad's arsenal is the honey trap, using romantic relationships to compromise targets or extract information. Consider the case of Eli Cohen, who established intimate relationships in Syria to gather intelligence. Agents who participate in these operations report struggling with profound questions about personal boundaries. Female agents face particularly complex challenges, historically viewed as sexual assets, while simultaneously questioned about emotional stability for fieldwork. A contradictory standard, the modern Mossad has worked to evolve beyond. The psychological impact extends beyond active service. Agents involved in targeted killings, similar to those in the Dubai operation, often struggle with the aftermath of their actions. The mechanical efficiency displayed during operations belies the complex emotional processing that follows. Some former agents report recurring dreams about their targets or developing obsessive rituals to cope with their actions. Mossad's approach to these psychological challenges is pragmatic. The agency provides psychological support specifically designed for intelligence professionals, but veterans describe this process as focused primarily on operational readiness rather than moral processing. The institutional culture emphasizes resilience over deep emotional examination of ethical dilemmas, like teaching tightrope walkers to look forward rather than down. Beyond individual impacts, Mossad's methods create broader ethical ripples, affecting Israel's international standing. The agency's use of identity theft during operations like the Al-Mabouh assassination, employing documents from allied nations like Australia, Britain, and Ireland, has repeatedly damaged diplomatic relationships. When exposed, these practices force friendly governments to publicly condemn Israel, creating tension between security imperatives and international relationships. The diplomatic consequences can be severe. Following the Dubai operation, Britain expelled an Israeli diplomat believed to be Mossad's station chief. Australia formally protested the misuse of its citizens' identities. These responses represent genuine damage to Israel's standing and potentially compromise future security cooperation. These tensions reflect a fundamental question: does national security justify methods that undermine international order? When Mossad operates outside Israel's borders, it challenges notions of sovereignty and international law. Each operation requires weighing immediate security benefits against potential long-term diplomatic damage. The targeted killing program represents perhaps the most profound legal challenge. Unlike military operations governed by laws of war, these assassinations occur in legal gray zones. The Stuxnet cyber attack on Iranian nuclear facilities exemplifies this dilemma. While avoiding direct casualties, such operations risk unpredictable collateral effects. Is a cyber attack that damages civilian infrastructure more ethical than a bombing run? The frameworks for these covert actions remain underdeveloped. For individual agents, these ethical questions manifest personally. They must reconcile their actions with their identities as parents, partners, and citizens. Many develop personal ethical boundaries, lines they won't cross regardless of operational requirements. One agent compared it to walking a tightrope while carrying increasingly heavy weights, possible with training, but eventually testing the limits of human endurance. The agency itself has evolved in how it approaches these ethical questions. Modern Mossad training incorporates more explicit discussion of ethical dilemmas than in previous generations. Operatives are encouraged to think through moral implications before deployments rather than processing them only afterward. This represents an institutional recognition that moral injury can compromise operational effectiveness just as surely as physical injury. Digital shadows. Mossad in the cyber age. The moral landscape of intelligence isn't the only battlefield where Mossad has been forced to evolve. While the agency once operated almost exclusively through human assets and physical operations, today's intelligence war extends into a realm where borders don't exist and attacks happen at the speed of light. How does a spy agency built on secrecy operate in a world where digital footprints are nearly impossible to hide? Behind Mossad's transformation into a digital powerhouse lies a uniquely Israeli approach to technology. The agency actively shapes tools through deep connections with Israel's thriving tech ecosystem. This symbiotic relationship gives Mossad access to cutting-edge innovations before they reach the commercial market, while simultaneously allowing the agency to influence technological development to meet its operational needs. Unit A200, Israel's equivalent to America's NSA, but with a distinct operational edge, serves as the backbone of this digital revolution. What makes this unit particularly effective is its recruitment pipeline directly from Israel's technology sector. Young Israelis with exceptional programming skills move seamlessly between military intelligence service, private tech companies, and intelligence agencies, creating a revolving door of talent and innovation that keeps Mossad at the cutting edge. The close relationship between Unit A200 and Mossad, along with the recruitment from Israel's thriving tech sector and close relationships with military intelligence units, has allowed Mossad to maintain its technological edge in the digital realm. Noted one analysis of the agency's capabilities. This integration of technical expertise with operational requirements gives Mossad advantages that purely military or purely civilian organizations struggle to match. This technological transformation was a necessity. As traditional espionage became increasingly dangerous, Mossad recognized that digital operations offered new avenues to achieve intelligence objectives with reduced physical risk to agents. The agency's leadership made a strategic decision to invest heavily in digital capabilities, creating specialized units focused on everything from social media manipulation to critical infrastructure penetration. The results of this digital pivot became visible, with Stuxnet widely attributed to a joint Israeli-American operation that successfully damaged Iran's uranium enrichment capabilities. Yet this was merely the public face of a much deeper transformation. Behind the scenes, Mossad has developed an arsenal of digital weapons that can remotely access smartphones, penetrate secure networks, and monitor encrypted communications, all without leaving Tel Aviv. In practice, this might mean infiltrating an Iranian nuclear scientist's encrypted messaging app, silently recording conversations while simultaneously mapping their contact network. The information flows back to analysts in real time, creating intelligence that would have required dozens of field agents and handlers in previous eras. Beyond data breaches, Mossad's cyber operations against Iran target physical infrastructure and military systems with sophisticated attacks designed to degrade capabilities without triggering open warfare. These operations form part of a broader campaign combining various intelligence disciplines. As one source notes, these cyber operations are a key part of Israel's strategy to counter Iran's nuclear ambitions, which includes intelligence gathering, cyber warfare, sabotage of facilities, and targeted assassinations. What distinguishes Mossad in the cyber domain is operational integration. Where some intelligence agencies maintain rigid divisions between cyber and traditional operations, Mossad has pioneered a hybrid approach where digital tools amplify human intelligence. A cyber intrusion might provide the blueprint of a facility for a physical operation, while human sources might identify the perfect target for a digital attack. This integration extends to recruitment. Mossad's talent acquisition focuses on identifying individuals from Israel's technology sector with both technical brilliance and the psychological attributes needed for intelligence work. As one analysis explained, Mossad's recruitment strategy heavily relies on tapping into Israel's thriving tech sector, which is a key factor in maintaining its technological edge. This approach ensures that technical specialists grasp the operational contexts in which they'll be deployed. The digital revolution has transformed how Mossad analyzes the vast amounts of data now available. Artificial intelligence and machine learning systems allow the agency to process information at scales that would overwhelm human analysts, identifying patterns invisible to the naked eye. These technologies have become essential as the volume of digital intelligence has grown exponentially, from intercepted communications to social media monitoring. Financial operations have similarly evolved. Cryptocurrencies have changed how covert operations are financed, creating new opportunities for anonymous transactions that traditional banking regulations might have prevented. This adaptation reflects Mossad's pragmatic approach to new technologies, viewing them as operational tools. This digital transformation has brought new challenges. As Mossad embraces digital tools, so do its adversaries. Iran has invested heavily in counter-cyber capabilities, creating a continuous arms race where techniques that worked yesterday may be useless tomorrow. Each successful cyber operation potentially reveals capabilities, forcing constant innovation. Digital operations create unique accountability challenges. Physical operations have immediate and visible consequences when they go wrong. Digital operations can have cascading effects that are difficult to predict. A cyber attack on infrastructure might cause unintended civilian impacts, raising ethical questions with less clarity on proportionality or collateral damage. Perhaps most significantly, the digital domain has blurred the lines between intelligence collection and active measures. Cyber operations can simultaneously collect intelligence and cause effects, monitoring a system while degrading its performance, or extracting data while planting false information. The future of Mossad in the digital age will continue this trajectory of integration and adaptation. As technologies like quantum computing threaten to render current encryption methods obsolete, the agency is investing in post-quantum cryptography while developing capabilities to exploit vulnerabilities in adversary systems. What remains constant amid this technological evolution is Mossad's core mission. The tools may change from poison-tipped umbrellas to malicious code, and operations may shift from hotel rooms to server farms. But the fundamental purpose remains ensuring Israel's security in the face of evolving threats. In this realm of ones and zeros, Mossad has redefined the very boundaries of what espionage can accomplish, leaving us to wonder what invisible digital operations are underway even as we speak. From its beginnings as a defense mechanism against encircling threats, Mossad has evolved into an organization whose very name evokes both admiration and fear worldwide. Yet beneath the flashy operations and high-tech capabilities lies an agency still fundamentally rooted in that original mission: to ensure Israel never again faces destruction without warning. This existential imperative drives Mossad's sometimes controversial methods. The tension between operational necessity and ethical boundaries remains complex. Mossad's reputation creates an invisible shield of deterrence. Adversaries hesitate, never knowing where Mossad's eyes might be watching, a psychological effect that may be its most enduring achievement.